The sun bled crimson across the jagged horizon, painting the desolate plains of the Wild West in hues of fire and sorrow. In a crumbling shack at the edge of Dusty Hollow, a woman's anguished moan sliced through the stillness, her voice trembling with pain and defiance. "Easy, it hurts," she whispered, her words barely audible over the howling wind that rattled the warped wooden walls. Her name was Clara, and in that fleeting moment, as her life teetered on the edge of oblivion, a man named Elias, hardened by years of loss and betrayal, stood before her, his hands stained with the weight of an unthinkable choice. The air was thick with dust and desperation, and what he did next would ripple through the unforgiving desert, a decision that would either damn him forever or carve a path toward redemption. This is not just a story of survival in the brutal Wild West, it's a tale of broken hearts, impossible choices, and the faint flicker of hope that dares to burn against the current of fate. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of the human spirit to rise above pain, please hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more stories that touch the soul. Your support keeps these tales alive. Clara's story began long before that fateful night in the shack, in a time when her laughter filled the air like birdsong. She was the daughter of a small-town seamstress in Dusty Hollow, a place where dreams were as scarce as rain. Her father had been a prospector, chasing gold in the hills until a cave-in stole his life and left Clara and her mother to fend for themselves. Clara grew up with calloused hands and a stubborn heart, sewing beside her mother under the dim glow of oil lamps, stitching dreams into every seam even as the world tried to unravel them. By 19, she was known for her quiet strength and her ability to mend not just fabric but the spirits of those around her. She'd listen to the townsfolk's troubles, her hazel eyes soft with understanding, her smile a beacon in the dust-choked streets. But beneath her resilience lay a longing, for a life beyond the endless toil, for love that didn't fade like the desert blooms, for a world that didn't punish hope. When Elias rode into Dusty Hollow, he carried the weight of a shadowed past. Tall and lean, with eyes like storm clouds and a jaw set against the world, he was a drifter who'd seen too much blood, too much betrayal. He'd once been a deputy in a lawless town far south, where he'd tried to uphold justice until a corrupt sheriff and a botched robbery left his partner dead and Elias branded a traitor. He fled, his heart hardened, his trust in humanity buried beneath years of wandering. Dusty Hollow was supposed to be a brief stop, a place to water his horse and move on. But then he saw Clara, standing in the market square, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she handed a tattered blanket to a shivering child. Something in her kindness cracked the armor around his heart, and for the first time in years, he lingered. Their paths crossed in quiet moments at first, a shared glance at the general store, a nod as they passed on the dusty road. Clara sensed the pain behind Elias's guarded demeanor, and he saw in her a strength that reminded him of a life he'd once believed in. Slowly, against the current of their own doubts, they began to talk. She told him of her mother's failing health, of the debts piling up like sand in a storm. He spoke sparingly of his past, but his silences said enough. They were two souls battered by the world, drawn together by an unspoken promise that maybe, just maybe, they could find solace in each other. But the Wild West was no place for fragile hopes. Trouble came swiftly, as it always did in Dusty Hollow. The town was under the thumb of Amos Kane, a cattle baron whose greed cast a long shadow. Amos had his eyes on Clara's mother's land, a small patch that held the only reliable well for miles. When Clara's mother fell ill and could no longer work, Amos saw his chance. He sent his men to pressure Clara, offering to buy the land for a pittance or drive them out by force. Clara refused, her defiance born of love for the home her father had built. But Amos was not a man to be denied. One night, his men set fire to the small barn behind Clara's home, destroying the few possessions they had left. The townsfolk, cowed by Amos's power, turned away, leaving Clara to face the ruin alone. Elias, who'd been camping on the outskirts, saw the smoke and rode into town, his heart pounding with a fury he hadn't felt in years. He found Clara kneeling in the ashes, her hands blackened, her face streaked with tears. For the first time, he didn't run from someone else's pain. He helped her salvage what little remained, and in the days that followed, he stayed by her side, repairing the damage and standing guard against Amos's men. Clara, wary of trusting anyone after years of loss, felt her walls crumble as Elias worked tirelessly, his quiet strength a balm to her wounds. They didn't speak of love, but it grew in the spaces between their shared silences, in the way he carried water for her mother, in the way she mended his torn coat with care. Yet, Amos was watching, and his patience was wearing thin. He saw Elias as a threat, a drifter who could rally the town against him. And so, he devised a plan to break them both. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Amos's men ambushed Elias on the road to town. They beat him until his blood stained the dirt, leaving him with a warning: leave Dusty Hollow or Clara would pay the price. Elias, battered but unbowed, refused to run. He knew what it meant to abandon someone, and he wouldn't do it again, not to Clara. Instead, he devised a plan to confront Amos, to expose his corruption and free the town from his grip. It was a reckless, dangerous idea, one that could cost him everything. Clara begged him to leave, to save himself, but Elias's heart was set. I've run from too much in my life, he told her, his voice low but resolute. Not this time. Against the current of fear and reason, he chose to fight. The night of the confrontation came swiftly. Elias gathered evidence of Amos's crimes, stolen cattle, forged deeds, and threats against the townsfolk, and planned to present it at a town meeting. But Amos was one step ahead. He'd paid off the sheriff and spread lies that Elias was a wanted outlaw, turning the town against him. As Elias stood in the town square, his voice rising with the truth, Amos's men surrounded him. The crowd, torn between fear and doubt, watched in silence. Clara, standing at the edge, felt her heart shatter as Elias was overpowered, bound, and dragged to the outskirts of town. Amos declared him a criminal, sentencing him to die in the desert, a punishment meant to break Clara's spirit and secure his hold on Dusty Hollow. In the shack where Clara's moan echoed, the story reached its darkest hour. Amos's men had taken her there, a cruel attempt to force her to sign over her land. Her body ached from their rough handling, her spirit bruised but unbroken. Easy, it hurts, she moaned, not from weakness but from the fire of her defiance. Elias, bloodied and bound, was brought before her, Amos's final taunt. The cattle baron stood in the doorway, his sneer cutting deeper than any blade. Sign the deed, girl, or he dies, he growled. Clara's eyes met Elias's, and in that moment, she saw not just a man but the flicker of hope she'd clung to all her life. Against the current of despair, Elias did the unthinkable. With a strength born of love and desperation, Elias broke free of his bonds, lunging at Amos's men. The shack erupted in chaos, fists flying, wood splintering, dust choking the air. Elias fought like a man possessed, not for himself but for Clara, for the chance to give her a future. He took down 2 of Amos's men before a gunshot rang out, and he crumpled, blood blooming across his chest. Clara's scream tore through the night, but she didn't falter. She grabbed a fallen knife and cut her own restraints, standing between Elias and Amos, her eyes blazing. You'll have to kill me first, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. The townsfolk, drawn by the commotion, gathered outside, their murmurs growing into a chorus of outrage. Amos, sensing the tide turning, fled into the night, his power crumbling as the truth of his crimes came to light. Elias survived, though barely. Clara nursed him back to health in the days that followed, her hands steady as she stitched his wounds, her heart mending alongside his. The town, shamed by their silence, rallied to rebuild what Amos had destroyed. Clara's land was saved, her mother's health slowly improved, and Dusty Hollow began to heal. Elias, once a drifter, found a home in Clara's quiet strength, and she found in him a love that didn't falter. Their story wasn't one of grand heroics but of small, defiant acts, choosing to stay, to fight, to believe in each other against the current of a world that tried to break them. They stood together in the rebuilt barn, watching the sun rise over the plains, a new day dawning not just for them but for a town that had found its courage. This story of Clara and Elias, of pain and redemption, is a reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, love and kindness can carve a path forward. If their journey touched your heart, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a spark of hope, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more stories that remind us of the beauty in second chances. And before you go, drop a comment below, tell us what moved you most about Clara and Elias's story, or share a moment when you fought against the current in your own life. Your words mean the world to us.